What's going on, guys? In today's video I'm going to be speaking about how I was able to use intermittent fasting to help me lose over 40 pounds and how you can do the same. Before we start, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is more or less an eating pattern in which you have periods of fasting and periods of eating. So there are so many different variations of fasting. So we got the 24-hour fast, which you go a whole day of staying completely fasted. Of course you are allowed to have water and like black coffee whilst you are fasted. Or we got the 20 hours fasted and 4 hours eating window, or the most popular one, which is the 16-hour fast, and then you have an 8-hour eating window. The one we're speaking about today is the 16-hour fast with the 8-hour eating window, because this is what I use and it really helped me lose those 40 pounds. So before we kickstart, just in case you're wondering, with that 16-hour fasting window, it is incorporated when you're sleeping as well. So if you sleep for 8 hours, really you're only fasting for 8 hours. Give you guys an example of my fasting window that I was using when I was doing intermittent fasting. So typically I would break my fast at around 1 or 2, and then I would stop eating between 9 and 10. So those are my 8-hour eating window, and obviously before that I'll just be having a lot of water, plenty of water, because I'm not really a fan of black coffee, so I'm just loading up on water, and that was making it a lot easier to sustain the fast. A lot of us do tend to actually fast without realizing we're actually doing it. So if you're someone who typically wakes up in the morning and you skip breakfast, or you're just rushing around and you just haven't got time to actually consume any calories in the morning, and then you don't consume calories until around lunchtime or something like that, you're basically doing intermittent fasting right there. So a lot of us do tend to do it without realizing. So even though intermittent fasting is just an eating pattern and we do naturally tend to do it without even realizing we're doing it, there are pros and cons. So let's quickly go through some of them. Some of the pros of intermittent fasting are, it does make it very easy to adhere to your calorie deficit, because you're only limiting yourself to an 8-hour eating window, which isn't much time. So it's going to mean that you're going to have to try and get all those calories in, and it tends to be quite easy to fit the calories in, and sometimes you might not even consume your overall daily calorie intake. For example, if you're someone who eats about 3,000 calories and trying to get 3,000 calories of good quality food within an 8-hour eating window, it can be quite difficult. So you're going to just naturally put yourself in a calorie deficit, especially because your meals are very close to each other. That leads us on to the next point. Due to the fact that your meals are not spaced out and they're going to be very close together, it's going to mean that you're going to feel a lot more satisfied for longer. Just due to the fact by the time you digest your meal, it's only a couple of hours until you need to consume your next meal. Just because of the fact you're trying to get all those calories in inside of 8 hours, it is going to keep you a lot satisfied for longer. The next point is suppressed appetite. So this is something I really noticed when I was doing intermittent fasting. Due to the fact you become very less food focused. Obviously during your fasted window you are trying to keep yourself quite distracted, so your mind isn't always thinking about food. But eventually when your body does adapt to intermittent fasting, something you notice is when it does come to actually breaking your fast, you don't feel like you need to break your fast. You can easily keep going. So you really do adapt, and those hunger pains or whatever you might get, they go away very quickly. That takes us on to the next part, cons. So like I just said, the hunger pains. When you do initially start intermittent fasting, you are going to have mad hunger pains, just because of the fact that your body isn't used to it. Especially if you're someone who's used to having breakfast, your body's adapted to naturally having calories in the morning. So now you're taking away those calories that it's adapted to having. So it's going to take some time getting used to, and at first, initially, the hunger pains can be quite bad, but of course you're making sure you're having plenty of water and potentially black coffee. Those hunger pains are going to eventually go away, and it does get easy. The next point is being time restricted. Of course, if you've got a very busy day, it's going to make it very difficult to try and get all your calories in inside that 8-hour eating window, especially if you potentially don't prep any meals. You have to try and prep meals inside that 8-hour eating window as well. That's a lot of time going by. So by the time that 8 hours is up, you might not potentially consume all your calories, and you could be ending that day feeling very hungry. Okay, so the next point that we have to discuss is temptation when you break that fast. Because guys, like I said, if you have no meals prepared and you go 16 hours of fasting, temptation to just go and grab whatever's in the fridge or in the cupboard becomes very easy. And those calories that you might grab might not be the most healthiest calories, and you're going to be consuming a lot of calories at one time, which can potentially push you out of that calorie deficit, and that's the last thing you want. So there you go, guys. There's some pros and cons that I noticed about intermittent fasting when I lost those 40 pounds. But the most important thing you need to realize, guys, that is without a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight. That is the most important thing. So I put myself in about a 500 calorie deficit that was made up of trying to be a little more active and reducing the amount of food I was consuming. So is intermittent fasting for you? There's a couple of people that really shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting. They are, if you have a history of an eating disorder or you currently have an eating disorder, I wouldn't really recommend intermittent fasting. Or if you're underweight, you really shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting, because you're limiting yourself to try and consume all your calories in such a small time frame, and it can be very difficult. So you want to avoid intermittent fasting if possible. Those people I just mentioned, underweight or history of eating disorder, I highly would recommend intermittent fasting, because yes, there's pros and cons to it, but when you get into the rhythm of doing it, it's pretty easy, and all you have to do is just skip breakfast. Have a calorie deficit, you are going to lose weight. Hopefully my insight into intermittent fasting has been useful for you guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you smash the thumbs up button, watch one of these videos before you go, and I'll catch you guys soon.